Hi, everyone. I'm Keith Mathis. I'm a premier ATP with the Project Management Institute. Let me thank you so much for watching our video today. This is going to be 7 minutes to PMP mastery. Today, we're going to be talking about understanding the role of the project charter. How do they position that on the PMP exam? First off, let's start off with the definition of the project charter. The project charter is defined differently depending on your industry, and then some of your organizations will look at it a little bit different as well. The PMP exam focuses on the project charter as a document that formally authorizes the project, provides the project manager authority to run the project and use the resources. And just to make sure that you understand this, the term team charter is not the same as a project charter. That's something that has come up in recent classes. So the project charter from PMI standpoint is a document that's going to say this is a project and you are the project manager and we do have resources to do this. So it's a very important document. It's not something very lackadaisical. So when you look at the charter and project management from PMI's perspective, they look at it through the eyes of strategic alignment. And so that means that executive management is looking at their strategic plan, and from that plan, they are trying to decide how they're going to utilize projects to make the changes in their organization. And so those changes will be much more broad than a single project. And so what you see here is that it's going through the portfolio, which is your pots of money, going to the programs, and then you're going to be going to the project. And project is the focus that we have. Because they're looking at it through strategic alignment, the mindset is that every project we have should be connected to some type of strategic goal, KPI, or objective. And so that's the reason why on this graphic you see the arrows coming down to the project, but then as we verify that the project's running correctly, you see all the arrows moving all the way back up to the strategic plan. This ought to have continuity in everything that we're doing with that. Who creates the project charter? Now, in your organization, the project charter might be created by the project manager. However, for the purpose of the test, the project manager is not there yet. The project manager gets appointed in the project charter. So the project charter is created before a project manager is appointed, and typically by a sponsor or sponsoring entity. Now, I'm not using those words by accident. Sponsor or sponsoring entity is going to represent management. And so that project charter gets created and it appoints a project manager, and that project manager then is able to take the resources and run that project from that point forward. Project charter, when is it created? The project charter is created in the initiating process. So no other documents are needed to authorize the project except the charter, and the project manager can begin using resources once the charter is signed. And so that's a little different than what many of you have in real life, and so you have to think that way for the purpose of your test. The charter is created in the initiating process, and so when you realize that no other document is needed, trick questions that can pop up is where they ask what other things should the project manager have signed in order to start the project. And they'll say, should they have the plan signed for? The answer is no. Should they have the budget signed for? The answer is no. There's nothing else. So those are all trick questions. So let's look at how it lines up. So you've got your pre-project documents, such as your business case and feasibility study. And so we want you to understand that those are done prior to there being a project. These documents are used so that executive management can decide what the projects are going to be. And so then what happens is when you get to initiating and sign the charter, that's the actual project right there. The business case and feasibility study, they're an input into the charter, but the point is they're actually a pre-project type of document. Now, the way this is structured for traditional project management. So this is plan-driven project management of initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and closing. And so you see this. And so this makes sense for those of you who have participated and run traditional projects. However, this can also be carried over into agile projects. Let me show you. So on the agile side, you've got change-driven project management. You still have the same pre-project documents. They might be done by a business analyst given to management, but the point is they still could be done and be part of your PMP test. You might even have an initiating phase, and so what happens? That's where the charter gets signed. You might even have a project manager appointed, even though your world around you might be that when we're running change-driven projects, we don't need a project manager. This would be a hybrid type test question that they're giving you. So you could still be running it in sprints and doing demos, retrospectives, and handing the customer something at the end of each sprint. All of that functions like agile, but that first piece up here of pre-project documents with the business case and feasibility study might function just like it does in traditional project management. So, what's the role of the charter? The charter's role is for alignment with the project and ultimately with the organization's strategic plan. Now, that might be a little different than what it is in your organization, but this is where PMI has been going for the last several years. And then they switched over to PMBOK 7, which drove a lot of those same ideas. And of course, PMBOK 8 will be coming out soon. But the point is that you have all of these driving in this direction. So, it communicates the organization's priorities and decisions already made by executive management. And so, the charter is just taking a piece of those decisions and priorities, and it's working it out through a project, and then they'll take another piece. So questions, give you some PMP exam tips for the project charter. Questions that ask the project manager to create a charter should be avoided. So it's not uncommon for them to have something happen to where a project manager is told to create a project charter. That project charter, that's a wrong type of question. That project manager is not to be creating charters. That's trick. That's a trick question. Also, somebody in authority might tell the project manager to create a charter. Still a trick question. The other thing that we've noticed too that happens from time to time is scope baseline compared to charter scope. So scope baseline includes a WBS dictionary detailed scope. So a scope baseline is going to be much more extensive compared to what you're seeing when you're looking at the charter. The charter is going to be very high level, and it's going to include a high level scope, high level description is what it's going to have. And so a lot of times your charter scope is just the beginning point, and then you're going to come back with your scope baseline. And then let me bring this to a close. And so let me thank you for listening to the PMP about the PMP test and how they handled the charter on that test. If I can help you in any way, you can contact us at 800-224-3731 or send me an email. Also, you can go ahead and jump online. We continue to do our virtual PMP boot camps for people all over the world. We do it every other month, and so you can contact us and sign in for one of those. Thank you so much for watching today. God bless you. I'll see you in a boot camp.